pleasure to have my good friend here, Clayton Yates, with me again tonight. And we were actually at Willow Hill about 6 or 7 weeks ago. So it's really great to be here and to see the venues, the new venues opening here on the property. It's a wonderful place. I love coming here, and it's peaceful, and it's with all that I'm faced with in my political role. This is a real nice dose of medicine to come here and to be able to do this tonight. So I'm going to tell a few stories, and I'm going to mix it up with some music. So we're on the Gunshot Treaty lands, and the Gunshot Treaty is one of the worst documented land purchases in early Canadian history, and it would factor in again during the 1923 Williams Treaty negotiations, if you can call them the negotiations. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Gunshot. But let's open it up with a tune, one of our favorites, a tune called Early in the Morning.
She's grown. That's the kind of girl you can never find at home. Come see me early in the morning, baby, about the break of day. Now you should have saw me hug my pillow where my baby used to lay. One drink of wine, 2 drinks of gin. Pretty little girl put me in the shape I'm in. Come see me early in the morning, baby, about the break of day. Now you should have saw me hug my pillow where my baby used to lay. To the juke joint, I peeped through the door. She was doing the boogie woogie in the middle of the floor. Come see me early in the morning, baby, about the break of day. Now you should have saw me hug my pillow where my baby used to live.
So next week is Truth and Reconciliation Day. It was Orange Shirt Day, or Orange Shirt Day. Orange Shirt Day actually came out of a reunion of the St. Joseph's Mission in BC, and a young woman that went there told her story of when she went to the residential school, and her grandmother bought her a brand new orange shirt for her new adventure at residential school. And one of the nuns took the shirt, and she never got it back. And she was, of course, demanded to wear church-run residential school issue. And so that's where the story of the orange shirt comes from, is the impact that had on her. And so now we're moving into a federally mandated, federally legislated day called Truth and Reconciliation Day. I'm not so sure about I know it's going to become a federal statutory holiday, and I don't know what the holiday has anything to do with. I'm a little troubled by that, but it's not really a holiday for me. I'll be busy on that day, believe me. And so factoring into that day is a lot of history around the treaties. The treaties are the basis of our relationship with the British. And I was just in Niagara Falls the last couple of days, and that's where the first treaty with the British Crown takes place, beginning in the summer of 1764. And it's called the Treaty of Niagara. And the Niagara Conference, upwards of 2,000 chiefs and warriors met the British on the Canadian side and buried the hatchet, if you will. The 24 nations, former enemies of the British, met the British and buried the hatchet, and the Treaty of Niagara was born. And so what occurred at that event was the exchange of a lot of wampum belts, and there were upwards of 80 wampum belts exchanged between the different varying groups. But one of the most important wampum belt was the Great Belt, the Great Belt of the Covenant Chain. It's probably a replication is probably as long as this stage here. I've seen them rolled out in meetings with the government, and the wampum simply signifies a relationship of two partners, one having no more control over the other, and so it is the Great Belt of the Great Belt of the Covenant Chain wampum belt that we still use replications of in our meetings with the Crown, either the provincial Crown or the federal Crown, to remind them of that original partnership that we entered into. And of course, that's over 250 years ago, and things sort of went off the rails in those 250 years. And so because we know how the relationship changed and was altered over time, we remind the Crown of that original relationship and that original partnership that is emblazoned in the Great Belt of the Covenant Chain. And so when I go to Niagara Falls, while it's a tourist trap, I go there with a historian's eye related to that original partnership between us and the British Crown. Very important historical event, and one of the most important historical events that brought peace to eastern British North America that very few people know about, because it was not taught in schools. And it is the basis of the peace that would ensue for upwards of 40 years after 1764. So the Great Belt and the Niagara Conference, that is the beginning of the relationship that we have with the British. And we often have to remind them of where that partnership is rooted. So I'll move from there, and I'll move into some of the treaty history, because we're on treaty lands here. We're on the Mississauga treaty lands, and it is the treaty process that comes out of the Royal Proclamation and the 1764 Niagara Treaty and the treaty conference that occurred there in summer of 1764. If you have any questions, please. It's sort of like a kind of an educational presentation on the one hand and a groovy gig on the other. Like, it's kind of unique. A nice mix, yeah. Let's do a little bit of hard living. Sure.
the sheriff and the highway patrol. There's a fool on the highway running out of control. It's fast liquor, hard women, the show won't leave me. You know I wish hard living didn't come so easy to me. I got my engine running, got my beer on ice. Might be a heaven, be a paradise. It's 7:11. Please set this poor boy free. You know I wish hard living didn't come so easy to me. And I'm downtown, I'm messing around. I got my mind in the lost and found. Step inside, don't be shy, 'cause every pretty woman got a ticket to ride. Well, won't you give me a shot of high-octane juice? There ain't a cure for the honky-tonk blues, and if I come up with one, I have it to you in a tea. You know I wish hard living didn't come so easy to me. Just out of gas. I always swear let the next one pass. I wish that a promise didn't break so easily. You know I wish hard living didn't come so easy to me. You know I wish hard living didn't come so easy to me. You know I wish hard living didn't come so easy to me. Thank you very much.
So, the Trent River. I'll tell you a little story about the Trent River. It was called, it interprets, in the Mississauga language, it's interpreted as a strong water rapids between Trenton, the mouth of the Trent, and Hastings. Of course, there's 18 locks, a lot of rapids, and very important fishing area, the Trent River. So, on the other side of the bridge, this is the Gunshot Treaty lands. It's now known as Williams Treaties Clause 2 lands. If you're to read the Williams Treaties, the Williams Treaty from 1923, Clause 2 will describe the lands that we're sitting on today. Over the bridge, we enter Treaty 20. So Gunshot 1788, it was revisited in 1923. Over the bridge, on the other side of the Trent River, and up into the Kawartha Lakes is the 1818 Treaty number 20. And Treaty number 20 is a very important treaty. My wife's cousin was charged in 1976 for hunting bullfrogs in Treaty number 20. He was charged by the MNR. He said, "You can't charge me. I have a treaty right." And so that case was known as R versus Williams and Taylor. And in that case, which predates the 1982 Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which also predates Section 35 of the Charter, it was that case in which the minutes to the treaty negotiations identified the dialogue between the chief, Buckoquet, and William Claus, the man responsible for negotiating the treaty for the British Crown. And in the minutes, Buckoquet asked that the islands be retained for the Mississaugas, as well as the hunting and the fishing, that it be retained as an Aboriginal right. And so that treaty, or when that treaty became a part of the court case, which was ruled on in 1981, which went to the Ontario Court of Appeal in 1981, the Court of Appeal said, yes, those minutes do identify that hunting and fishing and harvesting was reserved to the Mississaugas. And that's also the case in which the minutes to a treaty become a part of the treaty. And so it's a very important case. It predates 1982, Section 35. Section 35 says all Aboriginal treaty rights are hereby affirmed. And so, because it was pre-1982, it was hereby affirmed. And so it's a very important treaty upon which the Mississauga people rely upon. And although that case was enshrined in law at the Court of Appeal in 1981, it wouldn't really be until 2012 that the Crown finally relented and accepted the fact that, yes, it is hereby affirmed via 1982. So because of the lands that we are in, because of these lands that we sit in are the most important it's the economic hub of Canada in which we are sitting in. And I'm not here to whine, or I'm not here to complain, because I don't have to, because I know the history of our people. Our people have their rights and their harvesting and their hunting and their Section 35 rights trashed and stomped on because our people were deemed and seen to be in the way of progress. And isn't that something, how we used the rule of law. We used the rule of law to advance our own claims. And we never took up arms. We never resorted to violence against people. We view everybody as our partner. We're intermarried with people throughout all the area. And we always used the rule of law to advance our claims, always in a peaceful way, and always looking back to the great belt of the Covenant chain. Any stories? Any questions? Any questions, class?
Where are the treaties stored? That if you wanted to read them.
Yeah, there are some originals in the National Archives of Canada. You can actually find them on Google. You could do a Google search on Treaty number 20, 1818 Treaty number 20, and you'd get the whole overview of what that treaty was about. But some of the original treaties are actually still in the National Archives of Canada. Now it's difficult. You would have to go to Ottawa to actually see them. The original Williams treaties, for instance, it's in the National Archives. And there's actually one of our old treaties from 1819 is actually still legible, still readable in the National Archives of Canada. Is there a moon out tonight? No, there isn't. But anyway, let's go riding in the moonlight.
shining bright. Oh, baby, I'm gonna have a party tonight. Oh, baby, we're gonna have a party tonight. I want you to ride with your daddy while that moon is shining bright.
Thank you very much. Our people called Trenton, that area where the mouth of the river. Mississauga, Mississauga. That's the real word, Mississauga, Mississauga. It's been used all over now in Mississauga. Mississauga. It's two words actually. Missi means great or large, and Zaugi means something coming up to the mouth of a river. So where a mouth opens up to a lake, that's Zaugig or Zaugig, Mississauga. Our people were known as the people that live at the mouth of the great river or the mouth of many rivers. At the mouth of the Trent River, our people called that place Carry My Kettle. And about 3 miles north of Carry My Kettle used to be an old place called Gashiashin. And at that point, there would be a portage. A portage would come right over to, would bypass Glen Ross and Frankfurt, Keshiashin would, and then the portage or the carrying place would come over to, if we go down the Trent River and the Dog Legs to the east, below Ferris, Bradley Bay, where Dog Legs to the east. That's where the portage would come over from Keshiashin, and then it would jump across the Trent and make its way probably around the would become the Percy Portage through Dartford, and then eventually up to Rice Lake or the Trent River, where the Trent River starts around Scriver Island. You could jump across there and then make your way all the way to Shemong Lake. So all this area was full of carrying places. And some of those carrying places became the highway system of Ontario. For instance, Simcoe Street, coming out of Oshawa and heading north to Port Perry to Scugog Lake Scugog, that was the old carrying place, the Scugog carrying place. And so in some cases, the old highways of Ontario followed the original carrying places. Our people, before they moved to Alderville, they were at the Bay of Quinte. Our people were at the Bay of Quinte. And John Sunday, who was one of our old leaders, he said that our people at the Bay of Quinte, the Mississaugas at the Bay of Quinte, had our claims went as far as Banashee Island, this side of Glen Ross, and we also had an interest in some other unknown islands west of Glen Ross. And so that is why today the Alderville people still go to Hickory Island, and that's where our people have had hunting camps for generations. And we still go down there, actually. When we get a chance, we still go down there and exercise our Aboriginal and treaty rights at Hickory Island. So while treaties may seem like old, dusty history, they are still actively a part of our existence at the First Nation level. And so entrenched in some of those treaties are what we call treaty rights, but there's also Aboriginal rights. So treaty rights and Aboriginal rights are two different animals. I'm a wild rice harvester, traditional wild rice harvester, and that's an Aboriginal right. The way I harvest wild rice out of a canoe with 2 cedar sticks, with 2 of us in the canoe, the way I do that and the way I process that rice after I harvest it, I could show, if I had to go to court, I could show that I'd do it the same way we've been doing it for centuries. And that would be upheld in the court as an Aboriginal right. And so I'm very adamant about the practice and protection of the wild rice in Southern Ontario. I'm one of the, probably one of the few guardians of the wild rice in Southern Ontario. And while it's a beautiful tradition, and while it's really good to eat, it is an Aboriginal right that is equally important as the taste of it. The fact that it's an Aboriginal right, and the fact that we can show, and the fact that we have shown that it is an Aboriginal right and could be upheld in a court of law, that's as equally important to sitting down and having a feast. So that's a little story about treaty and Aboriginal rights. Monoman, you got it. Monoman, the good berry.
We just got tuned up real quick here, didn't we?
Where do you harvest the rice?
This year I harvested in Rice Lake, actually. Rice Lake had the most densest wild rice beds in North America at one time. In fact, there was one bed was reported to be 9 miles long. So fortunately, there's about a 5-acre bed of wild rice that's growing in Rice Lake, and I was out there this year harvesting there. We also harvest at Ardoch, Ontario, on the Mississippi River, about 100 miles east, well, not 100 miles from Alderville east, and that's but it's been struggling. It's under stress down at Ardoch on the Mississippi, Mitchell Lake up near Kirkfield, and there's various other little spots around the Kawartha Lakes in which we might find small beds. Emily Creek, the Steen River. It moves around. It migrates, and so one has to go out, as we do every year, to monitor where it is migrating and where it is. And it is coming up actually in Rice Lake. I noticed that it's actually migrating east or northeast down the lake, and so that's an encouraging thing to see, because our people. My mother was born in 1932, and our people were still harvesting actively at that time on Rice Lake. By about 37 or 38, by 39, the rice was starting to be drowned out. And while the Trent Severn Waterway never formally, I guess, acknowledged that it had something to do with that, we looked to the fact that the permanent dock that was built, or the permanent dam that was built at Hastings in 1913, that's the last flood date, 1913, that started to slowly have an effect on drowning out the rice. So an important thing that I've thought about is it'd be a great PhD thesis for somebody to do on what the loss of the wild rice did to the culture at Alderville and Hiawatha First Nation. By disenfranchising people basically from the harvest. Once the rice was lost in Rice Lake, then they had to go elsewhere. And getting to Ardoch, for instance, 100 miles away, was almost impossible for people to get there, of course, because they had no cars. Elmer Marsden told me one time that Frank Hearns and his dad, Amos Marsden, they went to Ardoch, and they, I guess before rubber was vulcanized, they got 14 flat tires trying to get there. Just trying to get there. I never heard how many they had getting back. So that's how hard people will work to get to a rice bed. I'll do everything in my power to get to a rice bed every September. It's an important part of my life. I want to do a song called Quarter to 12, actually. Little Walter did this beautiful song, and I want to send this out to the memory of a dear friend and colleague who we lost on July 20th in Alderville First Nation, Naomi Taylor. She passed away suddenly on the evening of July 20th. She was my right arm and my left arm in the office. She was my executive assistant, and she died suddenly at the age of 48. And so the last 2 months have been very, very difficult getting my head around that and getting back into an active sort of daily routine in the office. And so this goes out to the memory of Naomi Taylor. Thank you very much.
Well, John Henry has a little baby sitting on his daddy's knee, pulling in his finger at a little piece of steel. He says, steel's gonna be the death of me. Steel's gonna be the death of me. Low, low. Steel's gonna be the death of me. Steel's gonna be the death of me. John Henry had a little woman. Dress she wore was blue. She rocked down the track and she never looked back. She said, John, I've been true to you. But John Henry, I've been true to you. John Henry, I've been true to you. John Henry, I've been true to you. John Henry had another woman. Her name was Polly Ann. John Henry got sick and he had to go to bed. Polly, she drove steel like a man. 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 the White House, and then they let him in the sand. Every time a locomotive would come rolling by, yonder lays a steel driving man. Yonder lays a steel driving man. Yonder lays a steel driving man. Yonder lays a steel driving man.
Thank you very much. It's really wonderful to be here, smelling this campfire,
Listening to these crickets.
listening to the crickets, hearing the geese earlier. Beautiful hearing that, hearing the geese, and we saw a horse and donkey around the corner over there. That was a nice little surprise.
Super exciting. I love donkeys.
I didn't know that he loves donkeys.
I do.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. But it's just it's real nice to be to feel the energy of a live crowd, and so I just want to say, for one thing, thank you, Brian, for doing this, and Donna.
Yeah.
Brian and Donna, very important people in the lives of Trent Hills and our community as well. And they've hosted my son Jordan here as well. So it's just a wonderful thing that you're doing here. So I guess as we move into next week, I got a pretty busy day on September 30th. My wife gets mad at me because I'm stone cold when it comes to history. When I'm stone ice cold when it comes to this history that is, I guess, awakened a lot of Canada since May 28th when the Kamloops story broke. For a historian, if I let emotion take over, then I wouldn't be able to convey the history around a lot of this very well if I let emotion take over. And so she gets a little annoyed at how ice cold I am. I mean, come on, I'm a nice guy. I'm kind, I'm warm, but when it comes to history, no, I'm not warm. I'm ice cold. But one has to be. It's a disturbing part of Canadian history, but it's a part of Canadian history that needs to be told. And so one of my jobs is to keep telling that story. Alderville First Nation was the site of an industrial school. Our people were important allies of the Crown during the American Revolution and during the War of 1812. They defended Canada. They defended Canada against the Americans who breached the border at least 4 times. And our people were at the Battle of Chrysler's Farm on November 11th, 1813. And the Crown often relied on a certain individual, Robert Graves, and his account of the Battle of Chrysler's Farm, in which he donated some of our warriors as Mohawk warriors. And so myself and Patricia Kennedy, a former archivist from the National Archives, and a woman by the name of Trish Ray from the Mohawks of the Bay of Quinte, we took Graves and Canada to task and successfully identified some of the warriors at the Battle of Chrysler's Farm as Mississauga warriors who eventually became some of the founding fathers of Alderville. And for that, myself and former Chief James Marsden, we were invited for a private audience with the former Governor General David Johnson at Rideau Hall in 2016, the summer of 2016, in which we received the Defence of Canada medal, a beautiful medal that I proudly wear once a year on Remembrance Day. And we also received the Defence of Canada flag that hangs proudly in our boardroom in Alderville First Nation. And so that's the tenacity. Thank you. I'm pretty tenacious when it comes to the historical record, and it was the tenacity of myself and Trish Ray and Patricia Kennedy And I know we pissed off Robert Graves. I think that's his name. He wasn't too pleased with us challenging his interpretation of who was at the Battle of Chrysler's Farm. But it is what it is, as they say. And we now can proudly say that we helped to defend Canada. And when we fast forward, that large war monument you see at the heart of Alderville First Nation was built in 1927, between August and September 1927. It was the idea of our own people to commemorate the 9 men and the volunteers that enlisted for the First World War. 9 men fell during that conflict. And the first man to fall was Samson Cumago. Even the name rings. Samson Cumago fell on November 10th, 1915. He was anywhere between 45 and 50 years old. He was a sniper, and he was lost on November 10th, 1915. It wasn't until 1917 that the Dominion government had to accept the fact that under the treaties, our people didn't have to go over and fight in European wars. We didn't have to go over and fight in the colonial wars. And surprisingly, Canada didn't have a policy around our people signing up and enlisting in war, in the First World War. And the disturbing thing for the Crown, for Canada, was that they were concerned that our people, if they went over and fought, that the enemy, the Germans, would commit atrocities against our people. And that was one of the reasons they were very concerned with our people going over to fight. But by the time they finally accepted the fact that under the treaties our people didn't have to fight in colonial wars, it was too late. There was upwards of 7,000 First Nations, Métis and Inuit soldiers that signed up for service in the First World War. Over 300 lost their lives, and of those 309 died from Alderville. And it was 1917 that was the most difficult year for Alderville, in which we lost 6 soldiers during that year. And it was also the year of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. And that's why we have a small community, which is part of the reserve on the south side of Rice Lake, and it's called Vimy Ridge, after the Battle of Vimy Ridge, in which our people fought at. Our people bought that piece of land, about a 38-acre parcel, and added it to the reserve in 1914, and then it became known as Vimy Ridge after 1917. And so there's a lot of communities in Canada that have, a Vimy Ridge Park or Vimy Ridge Road, you name it, but we can proudly say we have our own Vimy Ridge in Alderville First Nation. And we're very proud, and I'm very proud to be at that monument every November 11th, and very proud of our contribution to the defense of Canada. And when it came to the issue over the residential schools that came out after May 28th in Kamloops, we had some people saying, "You should turn that Canadian flag upside down at the monument." I said, no. That's hallowed ground at the monument. We won't do anything to that Canadian flag, but we fly it at the most, we'll fly it at half-mast, which it is right now, flying at half-mast. It'll go back up next week, but we don't do anything at that monument to dishonor the Canadian flag or our own flag. So that monument, it's been there for 4.5 generations, and it's never suffered vandalism. For all that occurs in our community, for all that, for all the busy activity, and for all the people that come through Alderville First Nation, and for any of the troubles that we've ever suffered in Alderville First Nation, that monument proudly stands the way it's stood since it was unveiled September 25th, 1927. So it's a little bit about our monument. It's over 900,000 pounds of concrete, and it was built in less than 2 months. An amazing feat. And the man who provided the technical advice was a man from Campbellford by the name of Alf McKeel. And his son Alf McKeel and his son. They provided the technical advice. And now if you go up the river here, or up the river, or up the road, up to Trent River, up to the little hamlet of Trent River, and you see that little monument down there near the bridge, it looks like a miniature replication of the Alderville monument. I believe that monument was built in 1923. It's sort of hard to see the date on it, but I believe it was in 23, because my theory is that McKeel then formulated the design of the Alderville War Monument by 1927. So, and then there's a little green plaque that sits at the side of that monument, and that honors our wild rice harvest. And I wrote the text for that plaque, and so that's just our sort of connection to Campbellford. We have a very good history with Campbellford. Some of our people went to high school here many decades ago, and I have to be honest. The relationship between our people at Alderville and the communities along the lakefront is not so good. So it's like a north-south relationship. It's not that good and hasn't been that good. But the east-west relationship between Alderville and Campbellford is a very good relationship. That's sort of strange. It's very strange. Campbellford's not sort of doesn't have the loyalist sort of overview that other people do living along the lakefront. So that's one thing I've always noticed is that the relationship between Campbellford and Alderville is a very unique relationship. We're only actually turning a corner with Coburg and developing a much stronger relationship now, only now. But I think that we've always had a good relationship with Campbellford. And the first Christmas parade I was ever in was in Campbellford. Thank you very much. I was 10 years old. I hate parades. Okay.
I got the key to the highway. Well, I'm about to go. I'm gonna leave here running because walking is more, it's too slow. Now give me warm, more kiss mama. Honey, just before I go, because when I leave this time, you know why, I won't be back no more. Honey, just before I go, because when I leave this time, you know why, I won't be back no more.
a peep over the mountain.
Honey, I'll be on my way.
I'm gonna roam this highway
Until the break of day.
Well, now it's so long, baby.
Honey, I must
Say goodbye. I'm gonna roll this highway
until the day
I die. Thank you very much.
you don't love
Me, baby.
you don't love me, yes I know. You don't love
Me, baby.
you don't love me, yes I know. If you leave me, baby,
Don't you know you're gonna hurt me so?
I'm gonna tell my mother. I'm gonna talk to my father too. I'm gonna tell my mother. I'm gonna talk to my father too. I'm gonna tell the old man.
What these young girls do to you.
Goodbye now.
Pretty baby,
If I never see
see you no more.
goodbye now.
Pretty baby,
If I never see
see you no more.
well, you think I'm a fool now.
You better be on your merry way.
don't you know you're gonna hurt me so?
Thank you very much. Well, just going to say a little bit about being chief. Okay, that's enough. I never ever thought that would happen to me in my life. Ever did I ever think it would happen to me in my life. I was on council for 8 years, but that's a different animal altogether. But I never ever thought I would be elected to chief. And it's been one of the most challenging things in my life. And but it's been an exciting thing as well. One gets to get to that level where you're learning and feeding off of people at a different level. And I'm not quite used to the fact that I'm sort of the boss, if you will. I'm not really used to that. The jury's still out on how I feel about that. But it's been an exciting time. It's a real challenging time. Under the Indian Act is that oppressive tool that has governed our communities since 1876, and the Indian Act never cared about, and the government, which invoked the Indian Act, never cared about the environment. It never cared about all of those important things that we need to be concerned with today. It was only concerned with undermining self-government and undermining the self-governing traditions of the First Nation. That's what its main goal was to do. And in order to do that, it governed the people from what's been called cradle to grave, and very ineffectively and very poorly. And so my goal has been to get out from the Indian Act as the best way I can. And so in order to get out from the Indian Act, I have to advance other pieces of legislation, such as the First Nations land management, which will give us the tools to be able to manage our environment. And this last election, and no disrespect, a non-native ran for chief, and that really rubbed people the wrong way. And so I'm advancing a new leadership selection code and leadership selection process, which is found in the First Nations Election Act, and or we can develop our own custom code. And so that's one of the other things that will help us get out from the constraining provisions that are found within the Indian Act. So it's a very draining process, dealing with a government bureaucracy that administers the Indian Act. It's very, very tiring. You have a bureaucracy that has been in place for over 140 years, administering the Indian Act, and so because of that long, entrenched bureaucratic process, in doing so, it is very timely and very frustrating and very tiring getting out from under the Indian Act. So that's been one of my goals, is to advance our community beyond the Indian Act, so that we can take back control of such things as our leadership selection process and the environment, which I'm hugely concerned about. I'm one of the movers and shakers, the original movers and shakers of the Alderville Black Oak Savannah and Tallgrass Prairie, which is one of the most beautiful places. Thank you. Myself and Rick Beaver, in 1999, 2000, Rick Beaver and I were involved in putting the parameters around that site and we've grown it from about 92 acres to 130 acres now. And one of the most important things in that process was education and teaching our people the value of that site. Because, again, the Indian Act had become so entrenched in the minds of our people that our people, in some cases, forgot about how to be stewards over their own environment. And so it was that process that Rick and I went through in putting the bones, or sort of putting the flesh on the bone, if you will, and advancing the sort of educational piece and the management piece around that beautiful site. Beautiful site. It's so full of biodiversity, one can hear it almost in the morning or in the evening. It's amazing. And so that is one of the sites that I would take a stand to protect that site. I would take a stand against anybody I have in the past, actually. I ran for chief, actually, a long time ago, to split somebody's vote who wanted to run a road up through that site, and successfully split the vote so that this person never got into the chief's office. And I was ostracized in the band office for probably 6 months, whatever. I got thick skin. And I can look back and say we put that on the map. We won 4 awards, 3 provincial awards, and we won the International Pollinator Award, which was accepted at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. And I thought we'd get something like the Stanley Cup. Friggin' thing was like that. The friggin' trophy was like that big. I couldn't believe that when Rick Beaver brought it back. I said, what the heck's that? But the notoriety is quite amazing. We, at Alderville, and a site in the U.S. and a site in Mexico, we were the 3 recipients in North America to receive awards for what we have done there. So I'm very, very proud of that site. In fact, I built my house at the southern extremity, the southern flank of the Black Oak Savannah Tall Grass Prairie. And what I've seen there over the last 25 years living there would blow your mind. So I'm very proud of what we've accomplished there. And let's face it, without our environment, without biodiversity, we're in real trouble. Real trouble. So that's a little story about the Alderville Black Oak Savannah and the Tall Grass Prairie. I think we're going to have to get out of here soon. I just want to tell you a quick story about the Trent River. I told it earlier, but the Trent River has factored very importantly in the life of Alderville First Nation. In the springtime and in the fall time, that's when trapping season would be on, or that's when we would go down and harvest. And at Hickory Island, I told you, right at the end of Ketsmore Road, on Hickory Island there's some pretty old, rough, shoddy camps there that we still go to every now and then. And my son got a really cheap action figure one year for Christmas, about this high, plastic, really terrible little thing. And it made really weird music. And when you pressed the button on its chest, it would go, "I hunger." And his eyes would flash. So anyway, he got bored of that after 6 months, and it ended up downstairs. And 2 or 3 years later, my wife and I were sitting upstairs in the kitchen, and we heard it go off by itself. And she said, "You should take that down to the hunting camp." And so, this is amazing. So I put it in my gun bag, and we all went, my 3 cousins and myself, we went down to the camp, and we were all gung-ho for opening morning. And it was in my gun bag, and so we cleaned up the camp, and we had supper, and we hung around, just got ready, and then we went to bed pretty early, got the fire all nice and stoked, and then we went to bed, probably 9:30, 10 o'clock. And just before that, at that pre-lull point where, we're starting to get tired, I was on the bottom bunk, and I leaned over, and I pressed that button. "I hunger." And the music would go do do, and I'm not kidding. For the next 5 hours, it was torture for my cousins. It was torture. They said the stupidest things I've ever heard them say. One of them thought it was under my bed. Dobie, this is my nickname. Dobie, it's under your bed. Another one of my cousins thought that maybe the military was doing exercises downriver because it was sort of echoey, and they were frightened. They were frightened beyond. It was almost. They should have been embarrassed. And so we get up early in the morning, and about 4:30, we turn on the lamp. And they were just talking foolish for for hours about this thing that they were scared to death. And then I just reached around and you losers. And then they shot that doll off the end of the dock a week later. They assassinated that doll a week later. So that's a story, one of our famous stories of being down at the camp at Bradley Bay. It was hilarious. Let's get out of here, Clayton.
Yeah.
Tell me mama, brother.
Tell me, Mama.
Yeah. Or we could do.
Let's do Tell Me, Mama.
Okay. I want to thank Brian, Donna, thank all you wonderful people. What a lovely evening. Beautiful. The weather held. Beautiful.
And
Hey, Mark. Andy Thompson. Andy. Thank you, Andy. And Steve. Thanks, Steve. And the volunteers here at Westben. Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Oh, now tell me, mama, who said a while ago? Well, now tell me, mama, who said a while ago? Yes, when I come in, who went out that back door? Well, don't call me hit on mama, I'm gonna start a raging Sam. You been out boogie woogie, and there's something I don't understand. I want you to tell me, mama, who's that a while ago? Yes, when I come in, who went out that back door? Well, now nailed that door down, he couldn't get through. His hat in his hands, in my overcoat too. I want you to tell me, mom, who's that a while ago? Yes, when I come in, who went out that back door? By me running, smelling like a whiskey can. My hat in his hands and my overcoat too. I want you to tell me, mom, who's that a while ago? Yes, when I come in, who went out that back door? Want to pick a little bit? Ma, who's that a while ago? Guess when I come in, who went out that back door?
Thank you very much. Thank you.